Obviously, year 3, new defensive coordinator. When you look at the schedule and just kind of what's in front of you, what are the expectations? How big of a season is this for you?
Yeah, I think every season's big. Obviously, I mean, when you get to this level and you're competitive and you're competing in the American Conference, obviously, you know, the history of that conference the last 10 or so years has been, you know, a lot of really good football teams. And I think just now that we're adjusted, we know what it's about. You know, bringing Coach Cassidy in from Sam Houston, I think was huge for us. And this day in the portal age, I think sometimes when you look at coaches and you're getting into the hire process, you know, it's kind of some about what they've done. You know, he had a history of the last 2 years, you know, in the state of Texas, being able to go in and really change and play great defense at ACU and then Sam Houston. But then also him being able to bring some of his coaches and players with him in the portal age. I mean, you know, we signed, I think, 7 guys off the Sam Houston roster in the transfer portal, which was huge for us. I think just, you know, guys that have played a ton of snaps of college football, and that's something that we really pay attention to now in recruiting the portal is something that's been good to us is if we find guys that have snaps gained somewhere, and that doesn't matter if they're, you know, from the Division II level, you know, FCS level, another Division I level. The guys that have had the most success for us have come in and they played football somewhere, wherever that was. And so, you know, I think moving into this season, obviously I think our schedule sets up really nicely. Obviously, you know, we're going to play a lot of option football, so that's been an important thing for us this summer is really, you know, preparing for Army, Navy, and now Rice, all triple option teams, which is, you know, a tough offense to stop, and it's something that we don't see every day, so we've devoted a lot of time to that over the course of the summer. And then now, you know, I think, you know, the teams in this conference are really, really good. The last 2 years, you know, we've had these gauntlets of 4 games in a row. The first year was, you know, Tulane, SMU, UTSA, and Memphis all back to back. So this year we don't have, I don't think we have Tulane or Memphis this year. 2 really good programs, established programs. I think the interesting thing about the group of 5 level is going into the season now, you really don't know what's on people's roster just because the turnover is so heavy. And you look at the all-conference teams, you know, from the American, from the Pac-12 now, you know, from the Sun Belt, from Conference USA, the majority of the underclassmen, all-conference performers are now at the P4 level. And so so a little bit of unknown going into it now, I think, but I think, you know, this will be our most experienced roster, and that's not just including our guys that have played at North Texas, but guys that have played significant amount of snaps somewhere else.
Hey, Eric, Alex Miller from the Bryan College Station Eagle. Wanted to ask you about a guy from College Station and Dalton Carnes and just what you've seen from his journey with you guys and what you might be expecting from him this fall.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of like a Swiss Army knife. He can do a lot of different things. Great special teams player. You know, he's a gunner, led our punt team in tackles, played outside receiver, played inside receiver. Just a tough kid, you know, and too, when we started recruiting Dalton, Dana Holgerson, who was actually my coach when I played at Texas Tech, called me and was like, hey, you got to take a look at this kid. He's tough, he's gritty, he can do a lot of different things. And so I think, you know, a year under his belt now, he played a ton of different positions. So I'd like, and part of that was due to some injuries, but I'd like to kind of focus him in on being a slot receiver. I think that's where he's suited best, and then he'll continue to excel for us on special teams as well. But tough kid. Wish I had a couple more like him.
Kurt Bowles from Houston Chronicle. Eric, now that Texas State has gone off to the Pac-12 in another year, could you make a case for Pac-12 looking at y'all to give, you know, a travel partner for Texas State and a bigger foothold in Texas?
Nah, I mean, I think we're right where we need to be. You know, I think the Pac-12 is essentially, you know, the old Mountain West now. And so I think, you know, just to ask, and I've actually coached at Washington State for a couple years, and just my family being from Texas, the hardest part is the time change and coming back and forth or watching those, you know, being able to play a late night game on the West Coast and then get your kids back, and you're showing up at 6 a.m. in the morning and they're expected to come in the next day for study hall or practice or whatever you're doing. I think it's really tough. So I think obviously us having, you know, UTSA, Rice, you know, Tulsa, Tulane, just everybody kind of in this area, I think that this is the perfect fit for us right now.
Greg Lucas, San Antonio Express News. Eric, I just want to ask you about the opening few weeks of the revenue sharing era here. How has this sort of compared to your expectations? What are your overall impressions so far?
Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine myself, in the summer in June and July sitting in front of a spreadsheet. So, I hired a couple guys. Steve Kiesler used to be the athletic director at South Lake Carroll, and then Raj is a guy that we got from TCU. So both those guys in our general manager role have done just a great job of being able to prepare us for this. But to sit there and look at the numbers and divvy up the money and do the contracts and sign the contracts and then to see it all come full circle and then finally, I think our first payment went out at the 1st of July. And so it's been nice, unexpected, 15 years ago, just thinking about really, having a role in that and figuring out, how you want to spend your money. It has been a new challenge, I think, for everybody at this level. And so, but super grateful. Our athletic director's been phenomenal in helping in this transition and being able to go out and raise money and continue to build our, revenue sharing pot as high as we can is something that we're going to continue to do to put the best product on the field. And so it's been interesting. It's been a learning curve, right? And I'm a lot better Excel than I ever wanted to be or I want to admit to everybody here. I've learned all kinds of tricks on figuring out how to work a damn spreadsheet. But yeah, it's college football. It's here to stay, and so we'll continue to do the best that we can to continue to drive up and get more revenue to share with these players.
Hey, Coach Dave Wilson from ESPN. You started with the Leach shout out. Obviously, you had one of the great stories of last year's bowl season with this quarterback who came out of nowhere and had a huge game. What's the status of your quarterback derby now, and how can Drew Mestemaker ever live up to that game in the future?
Yeah, just a remarkable young man. It's been so fun to watch his growth, especially coming out of nowhere. I think, we were as shocked as anybody. We had 4 scholarship quarterbacks. He comes in as a walk-on, shows up late, and then, we get done of camp last year, and he wins the number 2 job and wins it pretty handedly. And so, I think Drew Mestemaker will play football on Sunday someday. I've been around a lot of good ones, and I think our quarterback room as a whole is as healthy as it's ever been at North Texas in our 3 years there. You got Reese Poffenberger coming in from Miami, who was Cam Ward's backup, so I had kind of a unique connection to him, who's played a ton of football, was really, really successful at Albany before he transferred to Miami. Signed Chris Jimerson, who's, probably the most electric high school football player in the state of Texas last year. I mean, to watch that run that he went on and beating Duncanville and DeSoto and Westlake, and, they went through the gauntlet and got them all. And so I think, those 3 guys are competing their tails off right now. We'll truly have a quarterback battle all the way up until our first game right now. I think, obviously Drew has a little bit of a leg up just because he's been through our offense. I think he's super sharp. He's savvy. It was always interesting because you had no tape to back up how well he practiced for us for a whole entire year. And even in bowl preps, Coach Cassidy came over and watched our bowl prep, and after like 3 practices, like, holy smokes, like, this kid's really good. Where'd you find him? And I'm like, he didn't even play football in high school. He didn't play quarterback in high school. And so, a remarkable story. I think Drew Mestemaker is a name that will be a household name at some point. But Reese Poffenberger is as good of a thrower of the football as we've ever had. So we'll let those guys battle it out and see who comes out victorious. But finding quarterbacks usually hasn't been too hard for us. We usually find a pretty good one to run the helm.
Matt Roy, News 4, Fox SA here in San Antonio. Coach, you're obviously very familiar with the area, being at UIW. How do you think UIW molded you as a coach and molded your kind of style of coaching as you go forward?
Yeah, it was a really cool place for me to grow and to learn. Obviously, I think, the first time you're a head coach, there's so many unexpected things that come across your desk, and you don't know how to handle so many situations. And I think it was a team at the time that, nobody really knew who Incarnate Word was or they even had a football team. So I think it allowed us to kind of put our stamp on something and not be afraid to be different. And so, you know, it was a great place for me and my family. We loved living here. We lived in Alamo Heights, just a couple miles from the stadium. Great memories. You know, my second son George was born here in San Antonio. Great culture in this city, great Mexican food in the city, great margaritas, and so always a place I love to come and visit. Proud of what we were able to do there at Incarnate Word, and I think, you know, their athletic director has done a great job of continuing the success and the momentum that we built. I think Coach Killo's as good of a young coach as there is in the nation. A guy that's one of my dear friends, one of my closest friends. Love him dearly, and I think when you have a leader like that at the top, that's bold and not afraid to go and do his own thing and put his own spin on things, I think Incarnate Word will continue to have success. The one thing that I hate right now, and you know, this is me calling him out, I just wish that the institution would support the program a little bit more and build something there, right? They've been super successful for the last 6 or 7 years now. You know, it's a national brand at the FCS level. And, you know, it just deserves more. You know, they need to build a new space for the kids, a new weight room, a new locker room, new coaches' offices. You know, I went to Shallowater High School, and it was a 2A at the time, and I think our stadium and our things were nicer there. And so I think as Incarnate Word continues to have success on the field, you know, they need to build something nice there.
2 more questions?
You were talking about earlier using the Excel sheet and figuring out how to spend that money. How do you go about determining how many players get rev share, what positions get rev share? What are those conversations like?
Yeah, so what we did initially is we took a bunch of information. My agent was able to compile a bunch of NFL information, and we went by percentages to kind of figure out how the NFL divvies up their money. And so we started, you know, with a blank number, and then we started divvying up the percentage of money that we had, the big pot, into the positions, and then we kind of went based off what we think our depth chart's going to be like, and so you know, the starting wide receiver is going to get this percentage, the backup's going to get this, and kind of went down. And I think anywhere you are, just like professional sports, I think, you know, you're going to have those good players at some point that's going to mess up those percentages, and you're going to have to pay more to a Dak Prescott that's taking a big chunk of all the money. And you're going to figure out whether you go out and raise that. The one thing good for us is we're not at the maximum like a lot of these people. So, you know, when our donors want to give, I mean, they can just give directly to our rev share pot and continue to grow it as high as we can to get to that maximum number, which is what we're trying to do now. But we did a ton of research in the offseason, started with NFL rosters, percentages that they're paying to these different positions, and started. And it was important for me to pay the kids that had already done something for us first and foremost, and so we started with our current players, and then obviously, you know, it takes money to go out and get kids in the transfer portal, and we're able to divvy up that money and where we felt like they were going to fit. And, you know, I think we shouldn't have too much dead money on our roster right now. I think that's where people are going to get in some binds at some point, where they have, you know, they're paying some of these freshmen a ton of money that have never played for them, and you have some dead money on your roster is something that you're going to try to avoid.
Yeah, I hadn't heard the dead money thing in college. That's something new too.
Yeah.
The whole transfer portal thing, Eric, how many did you have come in? How many did you have leave? And do you see that exacerbating and getting worse where people poach your roster?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a conference-wide problem, you know, for the group of 5 or whatever people call them right now, group of 6. You know, guys that come here and they have game reps and they've showed that they can play at a high level. There's video evidence of that. Then they're going to move on and make more money and all these things. And so I've come to, you know, I was sitting in my office and with Chandler Morris, who, you know, came and kind of revitalized his career and had a great year for us, and you know some of the most fun that he's ever had playing football. He's telling me, and he's bawling, crying, and has an offer on his phone, you know, which we raised a ton of money. You know, we're gonna try to pay him and treat him, you know, how he should be treated, and Virginia offers him, you know, a lot more money, almost triple of what we were gonna be able to pay him, and he's crying. I said, Chandler, like, you deserve this, like, go to Virginia and play this last year and have fun and compete your ass off and be a competitor just like you are. And so, you know, I think it's coming to grips with some of those situations where it's life-changing money for a kid that's 22 years old to go make a couple $1,000,000 for a year to play football and live out his dream is something that's been cool. And it's cool for me because I've been at all different levels. I mean, I was just at the draft a couple weeks ago with my son, with Cam Ward, who started here at Incarnate Word who had one offer and went with us to Washington State, and then was able to go make some money at Miami and do it on the national level. And so I think still at the end of the day, college football is fun. These kids have life-changing experiences, and they're put in these situations, at high-stress situations on national TV, to go out there and make their families proud. And so I think you get over it at some point. And to answer your question, last year we had 74 new players on our roster last year. We're not even close to that. I think we're around 40 this year. And so weren't hit as hard this year in the transfer portal. Got a bunch of players coming back. We're able to pay some of the guys to keep them and keep them happy. And so I think, college football obviously is transitioning into more of a professional model. I really wish we'd just make them employees and sign contracts just like everybody else in this world has to do. Unfortunately, we're not there yet, but I don't think it'll be long.